All right, welcome back, everyone. The next item on our agenda is 10.1 is the OPP Detachment Board report. You know, the interim, are you interim still?
Interim still, yeah. Next week actually is interviews for the detachment commanders position, so
Excellent. Well,
hopefully, by the end of next week, maybe we'll have some decisions about who will be in the role, so.
I'm sure we'll see you in the future.
I hope so. I really do. I love being involved in so. So yeah, just if you've got any questions throughout the presentation, of course, certainly interrupt me and let me know, or if there's highlights on certain pages that I've skipped over, just please let me know. So, first, the annual report, I just wanted to highlight, some things, in the community that were actually quite, profound, especially with respect to, the body that was found in 2005 in Rockwood. So with, genetic genealogy, they were able to determine through family members who the person was the deceased. So that actually assisted the investigation. So that's investigation still continuing. So that person was identified as a female that came out of British Columbia. So that was pretty big news, significant news when it came to biology and how we're catching up and how we can find out what family members are related to whom. So that was actually a pretty big piece that I wanted to share. That we are continuing to move forward on. That was a case that was from 2005. So
Sorry to interrupt, but also closure for the family,
100%.
right? Like
Yeah.
to not know where your daughter and loved one is.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's
And for someone to be out in BC, like, you know, and for them to be here in Ontario, like there's sometimes those connections aren't always there to say a person was missing here, but maybe the family member didn't know she traveled out here. And so that actually opens up a lot more tips and the investigation still continues. But it gives us actually some more ideas too about what we can follow up in terms of tips of, you know, was she banking a certain area? Was she using her cell phone at the time? That kind of stuff. So, that actually, my crime's originally or my background is originally in crime. So for me, I find that very interesting, how DNA can actually help us with that. So CFS has been really helpful, in that, and with the CIB investigations, there's a lot of movement, with the biological information that's available for evidence. So I just wanted to highlight that piece real quick. Also on page 4 of the report, we've got attachment abuse investigators that have been assigned through the province. So previously, we used to have abuse issues coordinators in each area, and now we actually have 2 abuse issues investigators assigned to our area to cover off our domestic abuse investigations and to provide additional supports for those investigations. So that's actually a good thing moving forward. I previously used to be a domestic abuse issues coordinator when I worked in Caledon. And it's very important to make sure that we've got the right resources available for our victims and also to make sure that the offenders are being held accountable. So I'm very passionate about that program. So I'm glad that we've got those 2 positions actually dedicated now, whereas before we only had 1. So community street crime unit. I talk really quickly. So if you're like, whoa, slow the bus down, that's really like, you know, so community street crime unit, they've actually been involved with a lot of drug trafficking investigations, with some projects actually involving Waterloo and York. Have done quite a few seizures, also including firearms offenses. They've resulted in investigation seizing about $100,000 worth of drugs last year, which was actually great to get that off of our streets in Wellington County. And they were also involved in a high-ring vehicle theft, about $345,000 worth of vehicles that had been stolen. And that was actually through Caledon as well. So I know that affects our community members here because their vehicles are getting stolen and then shipped out in containers. So that's kind of nice to get those back to people. So there's also been a string of break and enters. I know that that's actually hit the community here in Puslinch as well, which I know we've taken some proactive measures with regards to that. I know there were some questions about the break and enter piece before, I think that I got sent from Justine. Sorry, are you Justine? I haven't met you yet. So yeah, sorry, nice to meet you. So I just wasn't sure if there was any questions about the break and enter specifically or any comments about that.
I submitted a question. I was just wondering if there's any way of getting a feel for how many are unreported type of thing.
Yeah, so I think with most break and enters in my experience, people always report them because a break and enter is a violation of someone's privacy and their home and their space and where they feel safe. So I've not experienced, or I haven't heard of people that have had break and enters that haven't reported it, specifically with residential. When it comes to maybe commercial, that might be a little bit different because they might just say, oh, someone just broke the glass and it was vandalism or something. They may not report that and just claim through insurance, but I have not seen any residential break and enter myself personally. In 27 years of policing, that's not been reported because of that personal violations, so.
I would hazard to say if given the illegal marijuana operation, if somebody breaks it in, they might not report that one,
Correct.
but for the most part, but it's important people report it. I had a all instance, I had some people go through my cars and I didn't expect an officer to come, but I know the OPP is data driven. This is my messaging to the community is if you have something happen, call the triple, is it 888 or 800 number, 888?
Yeah, like, yeah, 3-1-2-2.
And just report it.
And there's online reporting too, so something as simple as, say someone stole $4 in loose change in the center of my car, and you think, I'm not even gonna bother. People can report that online as well, because then it gives us a map of where these people maybe went. Some clues about where we could go, maybe some ring cams that people had on their, we can do some canvassing. Because all of those things attribute to bigger crimes maybe in the future. Maybe these people are stealing money out of cars because they're trying to support their drug habit, or maybe there's issues with housing in the area or that need to be addressed. There's other social issues that are usually stemmed from these break and enters or property crimes. So I encourage people to report them. Unfortunately, there's not a mechanism for us to know what we don't know if people don't report it, but usually when it's residential, I would say, yes, it's always reported. But in a minor situation, maybe people are like, I don't really need that, John Thorogood CD from 1980 that I had in my car, they may not report it, but that's important to report because that gives us those tips and to follow up the major things, so. Is there anything about, break and enters? I know that there was a town hall meeting as well. Was that helpful?
I heard it went very well.
Councillor Bailey.
Mr. Bailey is away today. She was there, but feedback I received was went very well.
Okay, good. And if there's anything like that in the future too, that we'd like to set up, we're welcome to do that again. Our auxiliary program also has a CamSafe program, that they go through to businesses to say, you can register as part of CamSafe and just to let us know that you've got cameras in the area. We don't have access to their cameras. So the CamSafe program is actually kind of interesting because then we know that there's cameras in the area, so it saves us from having to go, do you have a camera? Oh, no, you don't. Yes. So we can actually have a quick list of cameras that are in that area that we can reach out to them to see if they're willing to share that. So that's something our auxiliary program is promoting with businesses in the area. We also have the safeguard program. So if someone actually is a member of the public, has a break and enter happen in their home, then our auxiliary members can come to their home and go through a checklist of safety measures that they can put in place. It's just a checklist that it's optional for them to go through if they'd like. Just to say, well, maybe you should put some lighting here, or here's some other options for you to keep your home safer. So we have that program available as well. And then we still continue with our lock it and lose it program so that, our auxiliary members will go around and look and see whether or not vehicles are insecure, or if people are leaving out items that are maybe of high value, their cell phone in the center console or something, just to remind them that if you don't lock your car, you might lose this. It might be taken, from your vehicle, and that's something that might not be reported just because people think, well, I just left my car open, maybe I won't even report this. So there's some different options available there, but if any at point in time that if I know there has been a high amount of break and enters in the area a few months ago, and if there's any other issues or concerns with the population here, please let us know, and we can certainly do that again, so. Or even if it's an education piece, we're fine to do that as well, so. So I'll flip over to traffic, which is on page 8. I know there was a question actually about the zero or about Lake Road. So our Black Hat deployment will be put out based off of complaints or concerns, and if there's the Black Hat data comes back to show that a higher percentile of people are speeding in that area, we will do a focus patrol in that area. We will still continue to do enforcement in that area, but we won't do it as a focus patrol, so we won't be recording the amount of hours that we're there, and we base that off the Black Hat data that we get for both the Black Hat data that we have for our deployments as well as the county's deployments. So we take that data and that's how we determine our focus patrols. Doesn't mean that we don't have more enforcement still in that area. It's just not a focus patrol because there's other areas that have been identified that we need to calm the traffic in that area. So at any point in time, if there is areas that you think, I know that there's a lot of speeding actually reported down here in West Lynch. There's a lot more paved roads down this way. The roads are wider, they're well kept. So if there are issues with that, certainly bring them forward to us and we can certainly address that. Or if we need to deploy another Black Hat in order to reevaluate that area, if it seems to have calmed for a little bit and then went back up again, we can redeploy. So,
So one thing we're encountering, I had a conversation with the Director of Public Works, it's in section 7, we paved it a couple of years ago. And we likely knew it was gonna cause higher speeds, but it's the heavy truck traffic. The road took quite a beating. Directors looking into it, but that's one that we're seeing as problematic is the truck traffic not adhering to the proper routes.
okay,
What would be the process for us? He needs to get the black cats out to get the data, or is it simply just an ask through an email for some?
yeah, you can ask through an email, absolutely. We have, we're very fortunate in Wellington that we've got 2 of our officers that are commercial motor vehicle inspection certified. And we also have time team members that actually are from this local area as well that will help us out with that. I'm a very big advocate of making sure that commercial motor vehicles are kept safe on our roadways because a lot of them attribute to motor vehicle collisions in our area. And there needs to be a level of accountability for those organizations that are running these vehicles at that level. So if that's something that you would wish, if that's an area where there is a high volume of CMV traffic, then maybe what we could do is organize commercial motor vehicle blitz in that area. So to see whether is it heavy loads that are causing the issue to the pavement. There might be other issues surrounding that. Maybe it's about their speeds, maybe it's about insecure loads, what that might look like. I know that there was a vehicle that was on, it was on 86 that was traveling down and there were stones just falling out everywhere. So those are things that I think commercial motor vehicle inspections can really save lives. And I think if we can stay on top of that, and if truck drivers and companies know that we are really on top of that in Wellington County, then they will want to make sure that they're actually complying with the safety standards that they're required to abide by. So I'm very passionate about that because I've seen so many collisions with commercial motor vehicles. It's not going to avoid all of our collisions, obviously, not all of our fatals in 2024 were attributed to commercial motor vehicles. There was 2 of them that were off-road vehicles. But that education piece, and that's something that we can do in terms of prevention. So if that's something that you wish, certainly email us and let us know, and we can make sure that we do that. So we're very fortunate to have people that are very passionate about that, and some great commercial motor vehicle inspectors in our area. So any other questions about traffic at all, or? In terms of our community response unit actually responds to a lot of the different events that we have in our area. Fergus Highland Games, Mapleton 150 is coming up, so they're assigned to a lot of those events. Our community response unit also is engaged in our Citizens Police Academy we had this year. I mean, we had that last year as well, or continued that. And a really good response with respect to new recruits and people that are interested in doing auxiliary. The auxiliary program is really expanded in Wellington, which has been fantastic. I think currently we have 21 auxiliary officers, which is very helpful for our community events. So that's great. Our community response unit also helps with our offender management and apprehension program. I don't know if you could recall, but back in 2024, we applied for a bail compliance and warrant apprehension grant, and we actually were successful in obtaining that. So it was a 3-year grant. And we use that as well as along with our community response unit to make sure that we apprehend outstanding warrants, and we also do bail compliance checks. So we will go to offender stores and knock to make sure that they're actually residing where they need to be and they're complying with the conditions that the court released them on. And we're also making sure that any members of the public that are outstanding on charges and have warrants out for their arrest are being apprehended and brought before the courts. So that's been a very successful program. We started with over 350 warrants. We're down to 111 at this point. And most of our offenders at this point are either identified to be out of country or out of province. And we're trying to find ways to return them back to answer to those charges. So it's been a very successful program, and it's something we're continuing to do on our fiscal year 3. So. We already talked about the Citizens Police Academy. Our media, we've actually done several press releases. We are trying to make sure that our press releases are going out in a timely manner. So as soon as we have the information, that it's fanned out to our portal. So we are working together as well with the school boards to figure out what the presentations for schools might look like in the fall, but that has not yet been passed yet. Every area seems to have a different perspective on that. So we're just waiting to hear back on our engagement at the school level, but we are still offering presentations through our community and safety branch. So there's any questions about that. There's some changes coming down with that. We're being very consistent in our messaging. Making sure that if a student in Dryden is being presented a weapons presentation, that a student in Guelph has the same presentation given to them. I know demographics might be a little bit different in some areas, but generically speaking, if it's a human trafficking presentation, it's pretty similar, so. Our auxiliary unit, like I mentioned, they've done 4,226 hours of volunteer service in our community in 2024. They had 70 members in 2024, and 3 of our members actually came through uniform recruitment, so it's actually a great recruitment tool as well. These members actually are phenomenal program. They've been around since I even started. So they they work full-time, and they still come and work pretty much full-time hours or part-time hours with us, giving up their weekends or evenings. They actually had their 65th year of the program this year, so we're helping celebrate that with them with an appreciation dinner for them. So in our courts, we are doing some local training with respect to evidence disclosure and timelines. They've tightened up a lot, so that really puts a strain on our resources administratively. So we're trying to look at different ways to be able to support the front line with administrative tasks. That is a bit of a challenge because sometimes when a matter goes before the courts, you only have a short period of time to get all that disclosure in. So that can be a bit of a challenge. In terms of acknowledgements, we've had members presented with their 25 and 35-year police awards last year. In terms of call for service on page 19, and calls for service from 23 to 24 increased approximately 7%. So I know our population in Wellington County is growing and is anticipated to continue to grow. So that isn't a surprise, but just 7% more calls for service, with our top calls for service being traffic complaints. And there's some mental health occurrences there as well that I think are important to address, but I can address that. It's actually included in this report or not, but what I will address actually with regards to the mental health occurrences is we've got clinicians through our impact team that are available to reply to calls with officers, and most of the time I'd say it's usually over 92% deferrals from the hospital per month from people going to the hospital. They defer them because they actually refer them to social services that are available in the community. So we're saving the hospital time, we're saving the officer time, and a clinician's actually engaged immediately in order to offer the correct support services for those people depending on their circumstances. So a real good takeaway for us. I know Wellington was one of the pilots for that ages ago, but it is really thriving and it's still continuing to be a really impactful program. So now, if I go to the statistical numbers, you're going to notice now in our reports that the OPP is now transitioned into making sure that our data metrics are the same across the board, similar to what I said about the presentations for the schools. So our detachment board reports will look the same across the province. So if you go to Haldimand County, it's going to look the same as it is here. So all of our data metrics are accurate and people aren't pulling information from different sources. In terms of our incidents for fatal injuries in 2024, we're down by 33% from the year prior. So that's a good news story. In terms of our fatalities in 2024, there was 10 incidents, but 2 of them are actually off-road incidents. Both I think occurring in the North County, not here in Twislinch. One I believe was in Erin and the other one was North Wellington. The Stay Focused campaign, and do you mind if I interject with some stats that I know currently, like that I know we're working with? But in terms of our year-to-date stats on our Stay Focused campaign, recently they had 39 cell phone, over the Easter weekend, we had a focus campaign. And we had 39, if you see we put out things on Twitter and stuff, we try to keep people informed. We had 39 cell phone charges over the Easter weekend. And cell phone charges aren't typically easy to get because people are down here on their phone or they're stopping, but our officers were able to get 39 or just over the Easter weekend. Another thing that was very apparent to them as well, we did a lot of seatbelt, I think it was 86, don't quote me on that exact number, but 86 seatbelt charges, and of which many of them were children that were not securely in their seats, which was very concerning to me. I thought we were past the stage of people not using seatbelts anymore. Like a lot of cars beep now and you actually physically have to put the belt in or else you're going to hear that beep the whole time you're driving. So that was something actually I would really like to focus on, making sure that we're doing more of those campaigns outside of the provincial campaigns to stay on top of that kind of stuff, because that really translates into road safety and part of our big 4. So that's just kind of a little piece that I wanted to bring in from this year that I know last year, it seems like our distracted driving is increased a little bit by 5, but if we look at our state focus campaign, we're at 39 charges already just after Easter weekend, so. I think that's kind of important to highlight, so. With respect to highway traffic deck charges, last year we laid 9,388 charges. And then they're, broken down into the big four at the bottom there. Last year, for the whole year, we laid, 110 distracted driving charges. So if you look at the Easter weekend, that's almost a third of that, so just on one weekend. So there's a lot more work that we could be doing there that maybe we could be saving lives, which is something we'd like to maybe focus on as well. And speeding also remains a major causal factor as well, and we've laid just over 4,300 tickets last year for speeding. With respect to, I'm gonna go over to, it'll be page, I think it'll be page 24 on your report. But it's just because I think the report goes in the back of the page, but if you need to take a minute to find out what page I'm actually speaking of. I'm looking at the records management page. So if you look at the number of charges that we have for assaults or firearm related offenses, our offender management program actually assists as well with the firearms related offenses. And our OMAP program was kind of born out of the shooting of one of our officers down in Haldeman. The person that actually shot Greg Prizachala was out on firearms charges and actually had an outstanding charge before the courts. So that's why we want to make sure that we're following up on these serious offenders. So I just wanted to highlight that our DAII positions, which are the Detachment Abuse Issues Investigator positions, are actually focusing in on these assaults as well. So the percent change there is quite high, 80% change from year 23 to 24. With respect to property crime, there is a slight increase in property crime in 2024. In terms of drug trafficking, a slight increase from 11 to 14 of trafficking charges in Wellington County from 23 to 24. I won't bore you with reading all the stats that really don't mean a heck of a lot, but another good news story, and this kind of leads from 23 into or 24 into 25, but we've had a lot of motorized, because we had a great winter for motorized snow vehicles, we actually had a lot of motorized snow vehicle patrol. I believe we put in an over, don't quote me on this number because this is 2025 numbers, but over 1,100 hours on the trails, or 1,100 kilometers on the trails with the snowmobile. So not 1,100 hours, that's a long time of driving snowmobile, but 1,100 kilometers on the snowmobiles this year, which some years we can't even get out at all. So it was really good to be able to get out and do that. Increasing in our marine patrols, that's something we're focusing on as well. We've already got our marine scheduled for the summer. And youth disposition charges. I know that there's a question about the disposition and what the diversion is. So our system, our niche data source system doesn't actually list youth charges that had a disposition type entered against them if it's a diversion. So if there's a diversion before the courts, there might be an opportunity to intervene with different programming for youth to say, you know, maybe there's some challenges or issues here that we can work through. And the diversion means they're diverted from the court process and they actually go into a different stream to be able to get those services that they might need to support them. So that diversion process won't show up on our system as a charge. So we won't be able to track those convictions. And that's why the diversion shows up as 0. So, or the diversion shows up at all. Let me just see, the diversion does show up here, but if it's diversion in terms of the disposition, that means that the person never had a charge before the court. They actually decided before the charge was even laid that there would be programming to support that youth through it. So we don't capture those numbers through niche. And that's something that's actually just noted on the bottom there in italics about our niche OPP system does not capture that, so. We had no fatal opioid overdoses in 2024, which I'm happy to actually report. That is, there's a lot of great work actually going on through our safe communities team with opioid overdoses as well. So, that's a good thing. And the more drugs that we get off our streets, the less available it'll be. So that's something our street crime unit continues to work on, in terms of making sure that suppliers are coming or bringing, supplies or drugs into our area. So, that's an area that we're focusing on as well. Not an area we often talk about, because if there is none, then that's a great thing, but it just means you're doing the work in the background, so. And mental health act occurrences I already touched on. We had 971 last year, which is quite significant, more than I can recall in previous years. I'd probably say that we have at least one a shift, if not more. When I first started on the road, if we had one for a block of 4, that would be unheard of. So it's good that people are reaching out, to get the services, and that we have the impact workers there to actually working in collaboration with us to get people the help they need, so. Victim services, people still continue to access victim services, year over year. I just wanted to highlight too, victim services does have, the, oh my gosh. I'm losing, Lifesaver, that's it. Lifesaver program where the bracelets are available for family members that have Alzheimer's, or if you have a child that's autistic. Those services are phenomenal, to find people that are missing. So just wanted to kind of plug that in and promote that as well. I know people are accessing the victim services programs. Victim services, I think is limited in their funding and their staffing as well, but that's a good news thing to have, a problem to have, if people are accessing their services, and we need to expand that program a little bit more. So they do have the funding available for more Lifesaver project, with more people having elderly people staying at home and not going to facilities. Maybe that's something that people would like to explore in the community, but super helpful in terms of trying to locate somebody, especially if it's during the winter months where it's a lot colder and the elements are a lot harsher. So save and accept any questions. That is the year-end annual report for volunteer time.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
I don't have any questions. You answered all of them. That's a great presentation. Thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if there's anything, please, is there anything else?
There's,
I do have a few, actually.
Yeah, sure. I like questions.
So, yeah, in no particular order, I think, I just appreciate your candid nature. I think, Mr. Thomas did a fantastic job of just communicating all the stuff that goes on, and I think it was incredibly well received. I think it's important to tell and show all the data. So moving to the future, I'd love to see it continue. So just my 2 cents there. Commercial vehicle inspections, I think there was one definitely last summer right on the edge of wealth. I would very much encourage that on an annual basis periodically. I think the mayor noted we struggle with like the high degree of truck traffic. And a portion of having a safe community is adherence to the law, and whether that's speeding or having a safe, compliant vehicle, I think is really important. So I would very much encourage the continuation of those efforts. In the data, I would love to see township specific data, and I realize I'm asking something that's probably hard to achieve, but the one thing I would note in the Black Cat monitoring, I think there was one in concession 4. It was just maybe a quick technical edit. You should say side road 20 instead of 30. And the other thing for the data, because the multi-road intersection was closed in 2024, it's probably important to timestamp that data, because that stretch of basically after that the intersection was closed, it won't be inhabited. It's a road that goes there anymore. So I'm presuming that data was captured before the road gets closed, but just for
And sorry, which one was that again?
concession 4, and then your report, it said side road 30, but it should say side road 20.
Is that on page 10?
Bear with me.
So I have here concession 4 plus lunch between side road 20 and Wellington Road 35. So I think the data was actually put in twice
Thank
because
you.
someone asked about the asterisks on the zero.
Yeah.
And it says concession 4, I think that's what you asked, sir, between Side Road 20 and County Road 35. I reached out to our traffic unit about that question and they didn't, I believe now that you're saying this out loud, it probably is the reason why the asterisk is there. And that there's zero charges there is because of probably the construction of the road closure. It would make sense.
And that's fair. It was just for future reference.
And I see that actually our charges on location on page 10, the previous page. The 1, 2, 3, 4th column down actually says the exact same location.
Okay.
Just named differently. One says County Road 35, the other one says Wellington Road 35. So I will make sure that that gets changed.
I think it was more just in the future, if it's referenced that it's inaccurate.
Yeah.
You know, the last one, I think the Can Save, the Lifesaver projects and what have you, I've just encouraged, you know, obviously Councillor Bailey isn't here today, but that's something that I think would be fantastic for the Safe Communities group, just to hear more about it and what they can do to help support those. I think that's it for me. So thank you.
Sounds good.
Councillor Gordon?
It's really a great presentation. Thanks for sort of summarizing all the different components. So much going on out there, so it's really important to hear from you and for the community here to all this great work that's going on. I just wanted to ask you, the enhanced enforcement. So in the report, it identifies there's several areas in the township specifically where there's enhanced enforcement happening, which I think in one way is really good thing to see that there's work being done to improve the safety in those areas and also just increase visibility in the community. I think that's really great. But I am curious to know, once an area is identified for enhanced enforcement, how long does that carry on? Like, how do you know how long this enhanced enforcement should carry on and how do you know it's being successful?
So we can continue with the Black Cat assessment to determine whether or not that the speed is actually going down. So that's what they'll determine on, whether or not there's any other locations that are coming up that need more enforcement. But I think it's kind of, it's almost like putting out a candle here and then another one starts up over there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're hopping around to different locations or almost like whack-a-mole, if you think about it. Like if I'm gonna get this location, okay, I got it, we're good there, and all of a sudden something pops up over here, and now this one pops up again. So that's why I think the communication with the residents here is so important, and if there's concerns that are brought forward, to let us know. Because I can honestly tell you, I worked in plain clothes before and I was in a plain car. I could see 1,000 speeders and traffic violations, but on my travels down here, I can travel 81 and everyone down Highway 6 will travel 81 with me because I'm in a police car, right? So when people see you, they don't commit offenses.
Yeah.
So our eyes on the road really are the people that are in your community. So if there is issues there, we can get creative in terms of how we need to do that. Sometimes the location's not great because there's nowhere to put a cruiser that people aren't gonna see it, hit the brakes before they get there. So we have to figure out what that looks like, but the communication from the community is really, really important. The Black Hat is just a tool in order to provide data metrics to see whether or not we need to focus any more energy on that location. So we do depend on the Black Hats for that.
Yeah, okay. And then, so just to touch on that, you talked about the communication piece. And I agree, I think it's really important that, I, for instance, will get phone calls or emails often with a concern about speeding on any particular road. But I think it's important that the residents that are living on the roads that there's concern are contacting you directly so that there's that informed. It's different coming from me, I think, than coming from those who are experiencing it every day. Is there a specific person or a specific email address that we could be having them contact so that there's more consistent communication happening to a specific department or a specific person, or
The
what's
most
the preferred way for that communication to get to you?
So I mean, people can report things online, they can still do that, or people can call the communication center if there's something that's live that's happening, say you're driving home and you see that someone's weaving in the roadway. Then our dispatchers can put it out to officers to say, is there anyone in this area? Then maybe we can follow up with the license plate to find out where that person's returning home to, those kind of things, like we can follow up a little bit more about that. But in terms of people, like the general public sending messaging, I would not suggest them to send it to me because of my portfolio, I wouldn't be able to answer all of their questions, and I don't think it would be fair not to get back to them promptly. But I think it would be better for them to come to your council to say, we've got a list of concerns here, we've got ongoing concerns with people maybe blowing stop signs of school buses or something. And then if the counselor emails me directly, then I can actually fan that out to who we have in our traffic unit to make sure that that enforcement gets completed.
But can they be contacting the police as well? Is there a mechanism
they
for them to
can.
do that?
The problem with that, I think, is because of our scheduling, that officers they might work for 4 days and they're off for 5. So if I say that there's one person that they would report to, then it would be a challenge to,
I think what the council's looking for is like a general email box, not
The general
really
email
looking to
box?
contact the area officer.
Yeah.
And we spoke earlier about the 1-888
yeah,
310-1122. If they're experiencing speeding concerns, they can either go online, report it, I assume.
yes. And
Or could they call the 1-888 center? They're not, like, and I think the messaging has to be, I'm not asking for the officer to come up right now.
No,
What I'm
no, it's
saying
more
is-
like a record keep, like,
well, you actually bring up an important thing that and I don't know whether it exists or not, I'll have to take a look into it or not. But we do have generic email addresses for, let's say, our media person, because there's more than one person that might cover that spot. So if they're off for that day, everyone has access to that email. So maybe actually it would be a really good point that if we might have one for our traffic management unit, to say that if anyone has concerns, they can email this traffic management unit address. And they would be able to voice their concerns so that we can actually keep track of that. And to be able to determine where would be good areas of enforcement. So that's actually a good point. I don't know whether or not it exists yet or not, so I'd have to take a look into that.
Just
Pardon
need
me
to
for
take
being new
away.
to the role, but
That's okay.
yeah, but that's actually a really good suggestion. So when you were just actually saying the email address, that actually might be better to submit it to a generic box that a group of people can monitor, not just one person particularly, because then that person just gets inundated with 1,000 traffic complaints. So
Well, the county started, yeah, they have a section on there, it's report speed concerns, but it's only for county roads. And I know when this came out, I asked them why we couldn't have it include township roads. Because the OPP looks after speed enforcement on all of the roads, not just the county, so. But anyway, maybe that's something we can, another thing. But, it would be nice to just have that point now, like, what would happen if I called 310-1122 and said, yeah, I just want to report that I've seen a lot of speeding on my road today. Is that gonna trigger a dispatcher to then blast it out to the officers, or is that gonna trigger the dispatcher, whoever receives the call, to make a record, like a file on that?
both, actually. So, I mean, both if it was live happening. So if someone said, someone just blew past me on Highway 6 and cut me off and they're driving erratically, then we would dispatch that out over the air. If someone called and said, every day at 4 o'clock, people speed past here when school buses are driving. Then that would be something that we would send out to our team to say, to be aware of this area and this issue. But every time you call that 310-1122 number, they will generate an occurrence. So it's a traffic complaint occurrence. So that will go into our system, and that's it's captured, so it's on file.
So in the interim, until if some other portal were created, they could utilize that.
Absolutely could, yeah, it will show up. So if I list all of our traffic complaints, so if someone calls a 33, or if they call a 310 number, then we can actually pull the data from our RMS system to see how many traffic complaints we've had in Wellington, where the locations are, and then we can start filtering through. So they can do that as well. It's just a matter of us pulling those metrics. And we've been very highly relied on our Black Cat data, because we like to be very data driven. If the same person calls 400 times, it doesn't mean that we're going to be doing the focus patrol there. So we have to be cautious about the data that we get and whether or not it's accurate data, and that we're being able to measure it, that it's going to be, it's a measurable data that we're actually being effective in terms of the enforcement that we're doing. So I think that's why we're really highly reliant on the Black Cat data. But I'm not trying to discourage the fact that there are eyes and ears out there for us that help us know where our hotspot areas would be. So I don't know if that really answered your question or not, but I think we kind of came up with some ideas, so.
We got it. Right?
Yeah, we got it. Generic traffic email. Oh, yes.
I just want to follow up on, also, our comment, yeah, that Title 30 descriptions on page 8 of the report, on the last half.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
I was starting to think he did some late night reading and
I
things started to blur.
did actually, but, yeah. Just for
Page 8. concession
my
four.
So
brand
on page
babbling.
8 is concession form. Should read this week, yeah, it should read 20 instead of 30 there, correct?
And you also said enhanced, I don't know if you want to do the enhanced anymore, because it's big, it's closed right now.
Yeah, the traffic's probably cut by 90% because it's not a thoroughfare. anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's why that 0 was there with the asterisks, and it's actually on there twice. On that list, on the enhanced portion of it, so. So this needs to be fixed, Sam, in terms of the monitoring devices on page 8. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna, there's some high level stuff and, first off, my understanding there's a moratorium on hiring new officers.
Correct.
That comes with, as a double-edged sword, because if we hire more officers, the residents pay for that, so it drives taxes up, but. I see from 22 to 24 in current calls for service going up. We're having more people coming to the country with the same amount of officers. Which will then lead into, so traffic complaints are on your 2024 top calls for service. Is that what's driving the increase in total calls for service? Is it traffic? Is it just generally everything's up or?
I would say generally everything is up. I'm not, if there is a slight decrease, it might be by 3% in certain areas or
Sure.
a slight increase by 10% or 14, but then it goes down the next month. Certain things we can't predict. We can't predict when assaults are gonna happen, that kind of thing. We do have a service delivery model that it is being rolled out through the OPP that's based off of data metrics again, about how many calls for service are in an area and where the biggest needs are for the next officers to be deployed. So they're basing that off of, the formula is above my grade 12 math.
You know,
So, but they've calculated out how long it takes for people to go to specific calls and to determine how many officers are required for that area. They base, how long it takes to get to a call, the geographical location. There's a whole formula that they've used for that. So that's how the OPP now currently is moving forward on their strategy to align the needs of that community with the officers that we have, so that the new officers that come in are placed in those communities.
at the end of the day, you're gonna need more cops. There's more people, more bad guys, more bad girls, whatever they are, right? It's just at the end of the day and having a carte blanche, no more officers. Again, recognizing that the tax implications to the residents, but. As our population grows, we're gonna be looking for service and, there's only so many people. So I don't know what the mechanism is. I mean, it's obviously a provincial decision, or political decision. I would assume political, maybe it's data driven somehow. But I don't think you would find support for a moratorium, even from the county, or if the data is showing there's a rise in everything, one way to fix that is more officers. And I like what you're saying with the data. What that's saying to me is you're finding efficiencies. You have this many bodies and you can, they do that for response times in the fire department, right? They gotta put a station over here to make sure they're there in 6 minutes, all good. So, it's good you're on it, but I'm just concerned about the bodies.
Actually, do you mind if I just address that really quickly? So that's something that we've recognized as well. We know the population is growing. I know Hillsburg is growing in population, Post Lynch is growing in population. And things that we've actually done to combat that is there's not a moratorium on hiring our civilian staff. So what we've now done is we are reinvesting into a program so that we can hire more special constables and detachment operations clerks. So what they actually do is they work alongside with a platoon. They work the same hours as platoon, and they're the administrative person that will process all their paperwork, their documentation. And maybe a lot of people don't realize the administrative work and policing is very heavy. Not that that's a bad thing, because it's really important to document those things, but it's really important to get the officers back out on the road to do that proactive work or respond to the calls. So with that, moving forward, and that's something we're in the process of doing right now, is that we've recognized that we've got a growing population, but we might not get those officers in as fast as we could. So we're looking at exploring the efficiencies and how we can actually reduce the workload on the officers administratively, so they can be out there being more proactive, so that actually will help alleviate some of those pressures. It's not 100%, but it creates better efficiency, so that's what we're working towards actually, with our new enhancement strategy, so.
On a local level, we have some concerns that may not be in your jurisdiction, but I feel like partially could, we have some hunting occurring on the west side of the township. And I'll say allegedly, the hunters are working a loophole in the hunting regulations, that you can stand in a river and shoot these, whatever you're shooting, ducks, you know, considering or assuming that they're abiding by all firearm regulations. I haven't witnessed it, don't know, but they're hunting in this river. It's adjacent to the city. None of the landowners around the river, to my understanding, have given permission to have anybody on their property. So why I'm bringing this up with you is, I'm sure you received calls for this. I would hope that your officers would be educated on, you know, the fact that these property owners have stated that nobody is allowed to be walking on my property, because where I'm going with this is, your officers get a call and they come out there and they see a hunter walking anywhere but in that river, they can charge them. You know what I mean? Because I've called in, trespassing complaints in the past, and I believe the terminology is third-party trespassing complaints, something like that. So, and then the officers don't know if I've been given permission to call in complaints for that property or not, so then these hunters would then essentially be allowed to go their way. If we have everybody educated that the only place these people can be is in the river, and I don't know how they get in the river without stepping on that private property, I would sit there and wait for them to come out of the river and start charging, because it's taking advantage of a called a loophole. So as long as, I would just hope that everybody's up to speed on where the authorities are, where these people can and cannot go legally. And if they step outside that, there's consequences, because there's a lot of upset individuals over there. And GRC is one of the landowners. And I did speak to,
GRC doesn't allow hunting on their property, do they? I didn't think.
some they do, but not that one. And we had Sam, come here, she's what, the CEO of GRCA, and, you know, I said the same in the speech, like, please contact it, make sure the right people know that nobody's allowed to be on there hunting, because if an officer shows up and if they don't know, they don't know.
Mhm.
But if, you know, so that would help a long way, and what I'm trying to do is make it so it's not convenient for these people to go there, and they'll go somewhere else. That's-
And has CM and R been engaged as well, or? I know that there's an officer that works at a Stone Road as well, in Guelph.
Very sure, I believe they have the chairs.
Yeah, but the loophole is the
Is it
river.
trespassing fee?
If they're in the, so if you come out and you see the guy standing in the river with a shotgun or whatever he's using, bow and arrow, whatever, then I believe technically he's allowed, but how did he get there? You know,
Mhm.
so
Walked
that's,
the river the whole way from Bellwood.
you had to get off the road sometime.
Yeah.
So that's where I think we can make it challenging for these people to come to this area that maybe isn't, I'm a hunter, but it's not an ideal spot.
Yeah.
Especially with the not willing landowners adjacent to the river. It's
And
always a problem.
what are they hunting, like duck
Ducks.
geese? Okay,
Ducks and geese.
so like fall hunt?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the fall hunting is being a waterfowl. Now there's sometimes allegations this year round, but I think that would bring us all to,
And I
as you know, the seasons.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, I hunted, so does my husband, so yeah,
so
so
it's
I get the
ducks
seasons, but
thereafter.
yeah.
And apparently they're staying right in the river, but they have to get out of the
Get there
vehicle.
somewhere, well, and even if they end up, you know, getting a duck of some sort, they still have to get it too, right, so. Yeah.
So and all I'm worried about is just,
So I think
Everybody-
the education piece is really important, and I think the communication piece is really important as well, so if that, when that season opens, I think it's in September, I think it
Yeah.
opens, but. When that season opens, there's no harm in sending an email saying, you know, just to be aware. You know, these are the issues that we've had in these local areas, to let us know that, and then we can actually send an email to all of our officers to let them know. That if it's in certain areas or zones where there's certain issues. Clearly, the issues in Post Lynch will be different than they would be in Wellington North, because they're different wildlife management units, and so. Each area is a little bit different, and if an officer isn't familiar with hunting regulations, they might not know those things.
we just passed recently, allowing Sunday gun hunting for fall.
Okay,
That's what, so you may see an uptake in some calls because may not, it's just doesn't happen.
okay.
Um,
So, yeah, communication is key. So if there's issues that you think might come up, I know it might be seasonal. You might not have that issue during deer season, or bow season, who knows, but if there's issues like that that come up, I think if you've got a concern about it, let us know about it, then we can communicate out to our officers, but we can also use a communication strategy out to the community about what hunter safety is and maybe communication through the county as well, about, you know, what the expectations are and that kind of thing, so.
back to the commercial motor vehicles, I think the Blitz is great. I agree with you on the safety, because generally when those things get in an accident, it's not great. Just by their sheer mass. But I think along with that, it's just the regular enforcement of the no heavy truck routes. And because we pave a road and shortcut, they're using it, so, again, supportive of that Blitz type enforcement to get overall compliance, but the random checking into these roads that are problematic would be very helpful for us, because that concession 7 is taking a beating. So leave it there.
Yeah, and if you want to send me an email on that as well, then I can actually make sure I get the kind out to our traffic team. And then it will give us an idea too about the areas that we can focus on, knowing that if they shouldn't be on there before May 1st or whatever that might be, for each road, that we can enforce that as well.
That one's year round.
That one's year round.
If we have a couple. Doesn't come to mind right now, total prohibition year round.
Okay,
And just due to proximity, and listen, shouldn't say this, but you know, the 401's backed up.
you're gonna
People are
get.
going
yeah.
everywhere. It's not ideal and, but it's the day-to-day stuff where they're using it habitually, which is problematic. If there's a major closure of 401 and there's 30,000 cars,
Yeah.
trucks trying to go places. I'm not asking the OPP to go down and enforce our no heavy truck routes on a situation like that. It's the habitual day-to-day stuff that takes a wear and tear on our roads.
Mhm.
I think that's all I have. You know. I'd say it's all I have to make about the speed enforcement cameras. I've really highlighted, there's a traffic speeding problem. You've probably seen the numbers, you may be privy to all of the numbers. It's incredible the amount of tickets.
It's a county run program, so we don't know the numbers,
okay.
because it's not run by police, but
I wasn't sure if you'd be in the meeting sometime. I know you sit in the council meetings, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if you're there, but, you know,
but from what I hear, it's effective.
it works great, but it's real money out of people's pockets. Now, there's an argument that, an officer wouldn't give me a ticket at X, and this is true. It's 100% true. We can't afford to pay an officer to sit at Brock Road 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. That's just not the reality. But, I know we have we pay for additional traffic cops. I'm sorry if that's.
From me, no.
Officers. But I don't want to get into details of where they go per day or anything like that, but and maybe I misunderstand, but I would assume that if we were a community and we're adopting the OPP as our enforcement, that service would have a component of traffic embedded in it. And then we also, as Wellington County, pay for additional traffic units. Do we know or have an idea of how many, is it work hours that we get in total, inclusive of the original contract? Plus the additional 7, I think it's 7 officers we pay for traffic.
For traffic, so just so I understand your question, you want to know how many officer hours are dedicated to traffic above and beyond the enhancements? Is that what you're asking?
No, the other way.
The opposite
If we
way?
didn't have the enhancements,
Yeah.
if we were just straight up OPP provide a service, I'm assuming part of that comes, we get a plethora of services.
Yeah.
Homicide, drug, but I'm assuming part of that contract would be built in X amount of hours for traffic, or no, or is it, that's the question.
So
Is
the
there a base?
expectation is that obviously traffic enforcement is part of that. Now, is it that every single officer has the exact same responsibilities? Because if we ask our school officer that you've got to produce 50 tickets this month wouldn't be feasible because they're actually in the schools doing presentations, whereas another officer that wasn't, maybe could do 100 tickets because they're out in the road the entirety doing that. So everyone's got different roles that way. Specifically in terms of number of hours, I don't know the answer to that question right now, so I'd have to look into that. That's something I'd have to look into municipal policing about whether or not that's included in the contract to say this many hours is dedicated to that, but things can change that. So like, say if we had a road closure, for instance, they might have been dedicated to traffic for that day, but because you can never predict what your day is gonna hold, then all of a sudden they've got to close a road down or a ramp, or they get an impaired and it takes them 3 hours to process something.
Yeah.
Then that could change things. So I don't know that there's actually a dedicated number, but I'd have to look in with municipal policing about whether or not there would be.
Yeah, just like an idea if
Yeah.
there is, you know, because it's fun, and I get there's partially may be able to share, maybe not to, but just wanting a better understanding of it, and for the record, you know, I would prefer that no tickets were ever issued. I think you mentioned how everybody would drive 81 around you when you're coming down here. I jokingly say, oh, like, tell them to come have their lunch and their break and just park their car there. Don't care if they pull anybody over, right? Just the visual aspect of a car being there works fantastic. So,
Unfortunately, we don't get metrics out of that. That's. a
I
problem.
know.
Yeah, right, so,
but
Yeah.
it's not, I'm not an advocate to, you know, get your employees out there and hand those many tickets to spot. That's not it. It's just, you know, it's just curious to what a base contract, which would generally provide for, you know, traffic control. Then we have the 7 additional officers, separate those two, and I'd like an idea of, you know, at some point, it doesn't have to be.
I think it's important too, like, if we have a higher amount of tickets, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Like, are more people speeding, or are we just laying more tickets? Or are people actually getting it and not speeding anymore? So it's very hard to gauge that. So for myself, when I look at traffic initiatives, I look at fatals, I look at motor vehicle collisions, and that data really highlights to me what the community safety portion is. Not so much the number or metrics of how many charges we've laid. So I think it takes time for people to understand, I need to slow down when I travel on Bellside or on Brock Road or, but now they're getting that, then maybe we've actually prevented a child from getting injured coming out of school. We'll never know that number, but our numbers at the end of the day, at the end of the year, what we're gonna look at, and maybe that's what's gonna make the difference over time. So that's how I like to take a look at it, because if I just take a look at those numbers individually, I think contextually it doesn't give us a big picture.
Well, I like to hear, I'm pretty sure it was for traffic, it showed warnings. And I like that because that to me tells me that an officer felt inclined to pull somebody over, but it maybe wasn't at a point where they felt, you know, they had to charge. And that's an education component. So along with what you're saying, is there more speed or not? I like it that, okay, there's some, you know, a reason to pull them over, warning was issued, whatever that justification was, I'm good with it. And, but then that person that got pulled over is like, oh, they're slow down.
Yeah, and we do a lot of warnings, actually. So we track that each month for each officer. So if officers are expected to spend through our service delivery model, are expected to spend a certain percentage of time in proactive enforcement, certain percentage of time in community engagement, a certain percentage of time on administrative tasks. So we look at each officer's portfolio each month to say, okay, where are we at? Do we need to sit down with them to say, hey, like, you know, what did you have going on this month? Did you have a lot of court? Maybe you couldn't do your community, you know, involvement. So we do take a look at those on a monthly basis with all of our officers. So there's no hard number per se.
Yeah.
But we do take a look at those metrics.
So last story, I remember bringing up with Inspector Thomas, I said, why do we live in a society where I speed once and I get pulled over and I get a ticket? I said, we should be tracking it, you know, if I had 8 warnings, you know, and then obviously I'm a habitual speeder, I should get a ticket, and we do. And that's when I
Yeah,
kind
we
of
do.
figured out, I
Yeah.
didn't know that we did that.
So every involvement we have with people creates an occurrence on our system. So we actually track all of our warnings. That's all tracked.
So when I get pulled over, if I haven't had a warning in 5 years, the officer can use their discretion. If
That's correct.
he or she says, see 13 of them, well, guess what? Maybe it's 2. So I like it.
Yeah.
I think it's all good work, and that flexibility is key. So, but anyways, thanks for the presentation.
Absolutely.
It's nice to have you down here.
Thank you so much.
Maybe
It's great to
one of
meet you. It's my first time actually in this building, so.
Nice.
Yeah,
We have a little room that's dedicated to OPP. I don't know if
Nice.
you know that.
no, I didn't know that.
Maybe the staff can just let her, I don't know if you'd ever be down here, but I think they get a fob and there's a key code and you can, you know, yeah, the officers can visit off hours and things like that, so.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Any other questions at all? No? Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate meeting with you. And then if there's anything, you certainly let me know. So.
Thank you.
Or same exact whatever happens next week. So. So, between now and next week, I'm all yours. So, yeah.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Do you have a recommendation?
The correspondence item 10.1 presentation by Anthony Schlesman and Rick Harris from Wellington County OPP, we received information and that council directs staff to contact Wellington County OPP regarding concerns with respect to hunting and the river off Hansford Road in advance of the fall.
Is there anything else you want to heads up on while on the no heavy truck routes? Do we need to send an email with that?
Just to flag the roads, I think, so that the officers have a clear understanding of what's.
Which ones are year-round prohibition in vehicles? Okay, can you move for that? Mr. Stewart, Mr. Bennett? All in favor? It's carried. Good. Move on to council reports. Is that correct? So we had the mayor's breakfast. When was that? Was that Wednesday morning? Monday morning. There you go. It went really well. Well, you got everybody was there. So for the first one, it was great. I look forward to seeing more business owners there. I believe it's going to be an annual thing. And continue that engagement. Heard a lot about traffic. That's a little bit. So also, oh, since cleanup day was Saturday. Is Mike still here? I don't know if he has any feedback on how much garbage we were able to pick up on the weekend.
Through the chair, come Monday morning, we had two 40-yard bins full, so it was a fairly successful weekend.
That's great. Thanks to staff for all the help with that. I don't think there's anything else in there to think of. Okay, so they would move in a second to receive the mayor's update. Mr. Hurst, Mr. Skills, on favor, thank. Any updates from council members? How's the shed coming bad now, you know?
Done,
Done?
done.
Saw some pictures from Councilor Bailey, she's not here, so look great from the pictures she provided. Good. Good talking.
Just we had a really productive Heritage Committee meeting earlier this week, so two things to note there is a clean school bell will be erected in the PCC grounds this summer, so I think that's a really positive thing for the community. So big thank you to the Coastlands Historical Society that put a lot of work and time and effort into design plans for that. So I think that's something that will be a showpiece come this summer when it's completed. So just a shout out to that.
Okay. Oh, Mike, any update on tennis courts, soccer fields? Are they all open yet, or where are we at? Did it go away? I think the tennis courts are open. Can you help?
So, through you, Mr. Chair, the Director of Public Works has shared with staff that the fields are opening tomorrow, which is great. We're opening them a little bit early. The tennis courts have been open for public use, but we will put them into the ability for folks to rent them now starting as of tomorrow as well.
I had an inquiry about the rink, and I believe it was still damp. Is it still?
It can start to be rented as well. Yeah, all the facilities are ready to go.
That's great.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Unless we can reach. Can I get a mover? Oh, go ahead.
Heritage designation opens on the 14th of the month, so any properties that are in this 2025 cohort round are encouraged to attend, and township staff will be doing a similar presentation to prior. But I think it's been well received for those properties that are going through it and want to understand what's part of the designation.
So choose over a second, again. Councilor Hurst, Mr. Greta, second, Councilor Flynn. Anything further?
Isn't there a bike rodeo this weekend?
Yes, this Saturday. That's Sarah, sorry. Bike rodeo here at the township office, pardon me? And the fish fries tomorrow. Oh, that's at the PCC, I assume. Supposed to talk to Barb and get the certificates. Okay. Is that it? Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Bylaws.
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2025-049 being a bylaw to authorize the temporary borrowing of funds to meet the current expenditures of the township council. The present during the fiscal year ending December 31st.
Remove please, the schools can do it, all in favor? It's carried. Announcements? Nothing good. Closed session did, any business arising from the closed session? And no motion today. New business? Well, good, firm to our bylaws, please.
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2025-050 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council for the corporation of the township of Crystal at its meeting held on the 7th day of May 2025.
Move please, Councilor Schools, Councilors, favor, carried, adjourned.
That council hereby adjourns at 1:59.
Councilor Retta,
Yeah, yeah.
Schools, all in favor, carried, thank you everyone.